as you'd expect. You have a bunch of stoners out on vacation, a biker gang who gives them a lot of trouble, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Jason Voorhees hacking them up. You have a prankster who takes it as far as possible, always playing a morbid joke in every other scene. You know, if this same movie was made today, is there any chance that this guy wouldn't be played by Seth Rogen? This guy happens to be the one who accidentally gives Jason the idea of the hockey mask, something that really catches on. This shot right here is the first time you see Jason with the hockey mask on. Movie history is made. So for those who want to see the Jason that everybody expects, this is the first movie that has that. Look at him run! There he goes again! Also, this one has greater production quality yet. Once again, the budget was doubled. This time it was about $2.5 million. As a result, it feels a little bit more mainstream than the first two. I think modern audiences might find this one more watchable. I personally find it to be more entertaining than parts 1 and 2. The kills are pretty good. Once again, there's no real reason why Jason kills everybody. I guess he just hates all people. The psycho shower shot is imitated. There's a good Fangoria magazine with Godzilla, have to point that out. The sign in the store says Green Valley, New Jersey, so if you ever wanted to know where the Friday the 13th story takes place, there you go, although this movie was filmed in California. Some of it at Veluzay Ranch, where I've filmed at before. Strange to note that it takes place the following day after part 2. I guess Saturday the 14th didn't sound quite as catchy. How did Jason grow into such a big hulking man all of a sudden? To make things even more confusing, one of the girls remembers being attacked by Jason years earlier, and according to the flashback, it's the same looking Jason that we see now. It's a tendency that the third installments in franchises like to employ retroactive continuity, like Son of Frankenstein, third in the Universal series, and Evil of Frankenstein, third in the Hammer series. The final chase scene is entertaining as always, but again full of slapstick moments. Jason gets beaten up way too much. What is he, backing up? Like, don't hurt me. Jason's a pussy. The moment that always sticks out to me is when Jason lifts up his mask and sneers, as if he knows he's scary. And she recognizes him as the man she encountered years ago. They did a good job on Jason's face. I remember being surprised that you see his face so much. In the Halloween series, they make such a big deal about the secrecy of Michael Myers' face, but in the Friday the 13th series, they show his face in just about every installment. Come to think of it, why does he wear a mask anyway? Spoiler alert if anybody cares, the ending is another strange and ambiguous one. After putting an axe in Jason's head, she gets on a canoe where she sees him still alive coming after her. Then all of a sudden, Mrs. Voorhees jumps out of the water, no longer decapitated. I'm pretty sure it's just a dream, and then she wakes up. The police escort her away, and Jason's body is still laying there with the axe still in his head. If this were any other killer, you'd say he was dead. But at the time, they had officially killed off Jason Voorhees. It's hard to believe that Part 3 was intended to be the last, to end it as a trilogy, but it was so successful that it went on. You just can't keep Jason down. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, we all know, was not even close to being the final chapter. There's never been an attempt to retroactively retitle it to Friday the 13th Part 4. Every new release proudly keeps the final chapter on there, a testament to how we like to celebrate the franchise for all its faults. If you're planning to watch just one Friday the 13th movie, I'd recommend this one, especially because it begins with a tight recap of the first 3 movies. It picks up right after Part 3. Jason, who just had an axe put through his head, is taken to the morgue where the coroner is busy watching this. What the hell is that? Number 9 in my top 13 moments. Apparently, it's a real workout video called Aerobicize, the Beautiful Workout. It's just one of those funny moments like in Troll 2 when the characters are watching something ridiculous on the TV. Then Jason gets up and kills the guy. The following day, another group of people arrive to the Camp Crystal Lake vicinity to a cabin they rented. I guess this would now be Sunday the 15th. One of the neighboring houses is where the Jarvis family lives, so there's 2 groups of characters that we follow. In most of these movies, the characters are very forgettable, But here we have two that stick out that are somewhat relatable. There's Tommy Jarvis, played by Corey Feldman, who's a kid obsessed with monsters and has a great talent for making special effects. I should mention Tom Savini is back doing the effects for this movie, so this kid is sort of like a young version of Tom Savini. On the other side, you have Jim, played by Crispin Glover, who's kind of shy and awkward, but he tries his best to fit in. He asks a girl to dance, but what he puts on is a metal song by Lion, and he flips out. Number 6 on my top 13 moments. He's a temperamental character. He always loses his shit over simple things.
He thinks that's funny. He thinks that's a funny thing he's doing.
He's the character who you want to see happy. You want to see him get the girl. There's subtle moments like this that make this sequel better than the rest. We still have Jason going around killing everybody. We'll always have that. But what we don't get that often is characters that we actually care about. It's also not often when one of the main characters is a kid. This helps make it more relatable, and it's funny that he keeps accidentally catching glimpses of naked women. He's just like the average kid who might have seen these movies at a young age, who, just like Tommy, it was their first look into the forbidden adult world. The kills are top-notch in this one. I mean, just fucking brutal. The Tom Savini skills are a welcome return, but it's a shame that the MPAA made them edit so much of it out. The Blu-ray has an entire bonus feature showing all the raw footage from the kills, and it's amazing to see how much of it there still exists and in near perfect quality. One of Jason's early kills is a hitchhiker, and there's no reason for it whatsoever. What did she ever do wrong? Everybody always says that it's the people who have sex are the ones who die, but in these movies that's not always true. Jason kills everyone. The hitchhiker scene sets the tone and lets you know that you're not supposed to take these movies seriously at all. So far in each movie, it's a different guy playing Jason. This time it's Ted White, who had a long career as a stuntman. Supposedly he was a stuntman on Creature from the Black Lagoon. I haven't been able to find any more information on that or what part he was in the movie, but I wonder, did he actually play the creature at any point? I've always thought of Jason as a monster from the lake, so if the same guy played the creature and Jason, that would blow my mind. In a couple of the interviews on the Blu-rays, Ted White says that he didn't like Corey Feldman. He said that he was a spoiled kid, a mean little devil, and that's what gave Ted the motivation for his character. He really wanted to get Corey. The final sequence is a doozy, just for the number of things that get smashed and broken. Okay, spoiler alert. Let's talk about the ending. I know it's not a huge surprise, but Tommy shaves his head, I guess to look like Jason or whatever, and then kills him. Yep, all that time it's a kid who kills Jason. No effort was made to explain how Jason survived an axe to the head, but now all they do is more of the same kind of thing. And this was supposed to be Jason's definitive death. Really? Well, to be fair, the special effects help sell it. We actually see Jason's head slide down the blade. It's absolutely grotesque. Tommy being so weird and maniacal makes this number 7 on my top 13 moments. Next thing, Tommy stares at the camera, I guess trying to hint that he's going to grow up like Jason. It's ironic that this was meant to be the last Friday the 13th movie, but all it did was help give it more life than ever. Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, begins with a nightmare scene with Tommy Jarvis, the character from Part 4. They were able to get Corey Feldman again, but his career was beginning to take off at this point, so they only had him for this one scene. When he wakes up from the nightmare, we see that many years have passed and he's now a grown man. Following his freak out at the end of Part 4, he spent all those years in an institution and is now being transferred to a community to live in. He still keeps having visions of Jason, which he can't get out of his head. But he's far from being the most disturbed character in the mix. There's this one guy who keeps offering everybody a chocolate bar. Everybody finds him annoying, but when he approaches an angry guy chopping wood, that turns out to be a total disaster.
Leave me alone!
So right off the bat, somebody who isn't Jason commits a murder. It comes out of nowhere, and it's all over a chocolate bar. My friends and I used to laugh about it on the school bus, and that was before I saw the movie and only heard about the scene by word of mouth. Because it's so unexpected and uncalled for, it made number 11 in my top 13 moments. As you can see, the murder happens off screen. You never actually see the axe hitting, and that's the way most of the kills are, unfortunately.
Ask me if I'm happy about that. I'm not.
Again, that's because the MPAA made them edit so much out. The most effective of all the kills that I think didn't suffer too much is the guy who gets his head crushed against a tree by a belt. The rest of the characters are all crazy. I mean, completely over the top insane. It's kind of like if you took all the characters from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Parts 2 and 3 and put them all together in one movie. There's nobody to relate to. Even Tommy takes a back seat to this flying circus of maniacs. I'm not sure if this was trying to be like a dark comedy or what. There's so much going on, I've even forgotten which movie I'm watching. In general, there's lots of characters. New characters are always getting introduced, so you never get a chance to get used to anybody. The good side is that you're watching a slasher movie, and if you came to see a bunch of idiots get slashed, then it delivers. There are at least 20 kills in this movie, making it one of the largest body counts in the franchise. The bad side is that the movie should have been about Tommy Jarvis, but there's too much else going on that we never have a chance to focus on him. It's a shame because he's one of the few recurring characters in the franchises. We need a main character to relate to, and we never get that. Still, I find this movie to be extremely entertaining. I remember it best for individual awkward, funny moments like this.
I want to make love with you. I said I didn't mean it.
The guy overcomes his insecurity to ask a point-blank question, gets rejected, and then gets pissed off at her. It's a truly funny, unique interaction, but what does it have to do with the plot? Nothing. Then there's the girl alone in her room robot dancing. Again, it has no purpose at all, but once you've seen it, how can you forget it? And if you're looking for a movie with the car won't start cliche, this movie uses it to the max. Even the chainsaw won't start. Strangely, when Joe Bob was hosting it, the drive-in totals wouldn't work. In fact, I've been having some technical difficulties with this video. You know what? Avoid this movie. It's cursed. You want to talk about the ending? Spoiler alert. Big spoiler alert. Ready? Here we go. The ending of Friday the 13th, Part 5, reveals the killer to not be Jason. All along, it was the paramedic who we see earlier, who comes in after the guy with the chocolate bar is killed. Guess what? That was his son. So because his son was murdered, he decided to dress up like Jason and go on a killing spree. Well, why did he end up killing even more people in one movie than even Jason himself normally would? Who knows? The guy just really flipped out, I guess. And if you stop and think about it, all the killing was all because of the death of his son who offered a chocolate bar to the wrong person. The whole entire movie was because of a chocolate bar. The idea was probably to mislead the audience into suspecting Tommy to be the killer, or the axe guy, but it doesn't work. I think by Part 5, everybody was so used to Jason being the killer that none of these possibilities were handled well enough to earn our interest. Of course, lots of people thought it was a big cop-out that Jason wasn't the killer this time, but it at least tries somewhat to deliver what the ending of Part 4 promised, with Jason being officially dead and Tommy going insane, even though the focus shifts away from him. The ending once again teases that Tommy's going to be the next Jason. Oh, really? This time? For sure? All this bullshit is just like the ending of Halloween Part 4, and they never followed up on that. I do have to say, I like the idea of the copycat killer. I think Part 5 was onto something. The thought of any person putting on a hockey mask and committing a series of murders is something that could actually happen. That idea is scarier than any supernatural slasher villain. It brings me to a theory of mine where none of the sequels featured Jason at all. He has a completely different body type in each installment anyway. What if each time it was just somebody else copying him? Even the retroactive continuity in Part 3 flashes back to show the Jason from that movie, which supposedly took place years before the Jason we see in Part 2. And if we're going by the idea that the ending of Part 1 was a hallucination or a dream, then we could say that when Jason drowned, he drowned, and that was it. Ever since Mrs. Voorhees attacked, It's all these different faceless psychopathic killers that have been in the area that have been blamed on Jason for lack of identity and the over-imagination of everybody keeping Jason's memory alive. Or Jason possibly never even existed at all. It was just an urban legend. That's why he's immortal, because nobody can forget him. Part 5 can be considered one of the worst or one of the best, depending on which way you look at it. It opened up some interesting ideas that unfortunately were muddled and never came to fruition. It's a complete mess, but I definitely find it to be one of the most interesting and the most entertaining. Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, is like a new start because it reestablishes Jason Voorhees as the main focus. It opens with a full moon and a foggy forest. It's refreshing to see one of these films begin with atmosphere and mood rather than modern exploitation. Thunderstorms and cemeteries never get old. We can thank the director Tom McLaughlin for turning to classic horror films for inspiration. In the Blu-ray extras, he said he wanted this to be the type of movie that you can watch in black and white. So if you turn the color off on your TV, it would look like it was meant to be that way. After all, the opening scene is very reminiscent of the opening of Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, where two grave robbers open the tomb of the Wolfman and accidentally bring him back to life. Tommy Jarvis, the character from parts 4 and 5, along with a friend, go to the grave of Jason Voorhees. For what purpose? Well, Tommy just needs to make sure that he's really dead. He looks pretty damn dead. What a disgusting looking corpse. Props to the props department. But Tommy isn't satisfied, so he grabs a metal rod from a nearby gate and stabs the fuck out of Jason like old times. It's also convenient that Tommy brought along Jason's old hockey mask, which he's kept safe ever since. It even still has the same axe mark from Part 3, probably the most impressive respect to continuity that any of these films have ever managed. Then a lightning bolt strikes the rod, sending electricity into Jason's body, charging him up like a battery that's been dead. And that's all it takes to bring him back. The lightning bolt resurrection is almost a cliche that goes back to Ghost of Frankenstein. Most people say this is the first movie where Jason is a zombie, even though I've always thought of him as a zombie ever since he drowned in the lake. So the part where the guy gets his heart ripped out was cut short.
The MPAA made him cut that, and then of course TNT got a hold of it. Now it looks like he just gets pushed to death.
When you see Jason put on the mask and turn around, that's one of his shining moments. It's just like the first time when you see the Frankenstein monster. And then, what? A James Bond spoof in a Friday the 13th film? This whole pre-credit scene, which made number 13 on my top 13 moments, is just like a Bond film. It gets the movie started and you cheer for Jason Voorhees the same way you would with James Bond. The rest of the movie is downhill. If you've seen the beginning, I would just leave it at that. There's nothing too special about the rest, but it does exactly what it advertised. It doesn't try to be anything more than what it is. There's more references to classic horror films like the name of the grocery store, Karloff's. The best part of the movie is Jason, without a doubt. For some reason, he just keeps getting cooler with every installment. This time he's been fully elevated to a supernatural killer, a movie monster, doing kills that are impossible for a human being to do. One of my favorite parts is when he kills the driver of an RV, which causes a spectacular crash. It's moments like these that make Jason into some kind of action anti-hero. Other minor highlights, there's the cemetery caretaker, who is a great-looking character, though his role is very brief. In the original ending, according to the storyboards, it's explained that he's paid to look after Mrs. Voorhees' grave by Mr. Voorhees. That's right, Jason's dad. Then there's the pissed-off paintball guy. Then I have to point out a sort of editing gag.
You think I'm a farthead?
Why was that necessary? You know what? Anytime I make any kind of statement, I wish I had a crowd of kids saying, "Yeah!" During the kills, you hardly see anything. Aren't the MPAA a bunch of fart heads? You know, that rug. My family had that same rug back in the 80s. Must have been a common rug. That's some pretty interesting trivia, isn't it? One thing that adds to the appeal of Part 6 is that they got Alice Cooper on the soundtrack, which was something that just had to happen. Overall, Part 6 is a fun movie, as long as you don't expect much from it. It's very self-aware with humor spread throughout. It can be considered fresh because how it invigorates Jason, making him more badass than before, and it has a bigger budget, about $3 million, and more polished look than the previous installments. But it can also be considered stale because it's very formula-based, it doesn't do anything new or interesting with the story, and maybe that's because it's part 6 and there wasn't a whole lot left to do. The big missed opportunity was the character Tommy. Notice how I haven't talked about him much, because he's so forgettable. He never does anything interesting, he's just kind of there. This is a character who's supposed to be disturbed, having a traumatic past with Jason. He's the closest we come to a Laurie Strode equivalent, but it never really amounts to anything. I think it also has something to do with Tommy being played by a different actor in each movie, so you never get time to get used to one person. This is the last of the Tommy trilogy. Corey Feldman has expressed some interest in returning as Tommy in a future sequel, giving it sort of an H2O treatment, just picking up from part 4 and ignoring everything in between. I wouldn't mind that, wouldn't you? Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, begins with a young girl, Tina, who's running away from her drunken and abusive father. Her emotions are so strong that it causes some sort of telekinetic reaction. A Jedi power, if you will, tearing down the dock, trapping him underwater and killing him. All by accident from a power she didn't know she had. Years later, as an adult, Tina revisits the dock out of guilt and wishes she could bring him back. Well, it just so happens that Jason Voorhees is under the lake after having been chopped up by the propeller of a boat at the end of Part 6. Even though his eyes opened before the credits rolled, I guess he's supposed to have been dead all that time, and after all these years, Tina's powers bring him back to life. Now that Jason's walking about again, he immediately gets back to business, hacking people up. But you won't see much of that thanks to the MPAA. Luckily, you can see all the deleted gory bits on the Blu-ray extras. The image quality sucks, but it's better than nothing. Isn't it a shame to see Jason pick up a giant weed whacker, or whatever kind of power tool this is, and build up to an amazing kill, only to cut away and not show us anything? Here's what you missed. Then there's the sleeping bag kill, which is one of Jason's funniest kills ever. In the final edit, you only see him smack the body against the tree once. Just once. But if it wasn't for the MPAA, it would have been several hits. The worst cut of all was when Jason squishes a guy's head. You see nothing, but originally there was this awesome special effect. Oh, man! The movie suffers from the same usual thing. You don't care about anything but Jason. As far as the other characters are concerned, there's Tina, who we already mentioned. Then there's, nobody else worth mentioning, except maybe this geeky girl who reminds me of the boy-crazy Irma from Ninja Turtles. Let's get back to Jason then. He's played by Kane Hodder for the first time, the only guy who had the balls to play Jason more than once. Since Jason is a role that requires a lot of stunts, it always made sense to use actors who can do their own stunts. He gave Jason a little more personality, like he's fucking pissed off all the time. Also, it's the best looking Jason of the whole series. The way he looks in this movie is just like he's been through 7 movies. Part of the mask is broken off, his clothing is all ragged, and you can see parts of his bones underneath.